Everyone, welcome to the second episode of the GTM Rapidfire, where we talk to GTM leaders from across the globe, their journey, their learnings. The format is simple, 5 questions. We'll keep it straightforward, focused, to the point, and of course, a little bit of banter. Our guest is really special today. Welcome, Julien. Julien comes with over 15 years of experience in tech, uh, including working at the biggest marketing teams, leading marketing teams at Salesforce, Gong, Clari, and now he is the chief marketing officer at Cordial. Uh, I would like not take your spotlight and let Julien introduce himself. So Julien, can you just like give a brief about your journey, how you found your way into product marketing, and how are you liking your new role right now?
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for having me. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you are. Yeah, how? So my background is technical, actually. I'm French, and I studied in France, and so I started as a data scientist back in the days before AI was all the rage that it has become now. Moved into consulting, and then I was like, mid-career type thing. I was like, oh man. I'm really interested in you know, doing the same, like instead of doing the same thing over and over again, do that once and then amplify across all the channels, which is the definition of marketing. And since I am a technical product-minded type of guy, product marketing was just a natural fit for me. So that's kind of why. And then I moved over to the US back in 2012, crossed the Atlantic Ocean to come here to San Francisco, where I live, and it's been a joy. And now CMO at Cordial. It's been a few weeks now.
That's yeah, that's lovely. I hope you kill it in your next job. I love your LinkedIn posts, by the way. I love your hot
Thank you.
takes. Yes, absolutely. I think all of us enjoy it. So on that like note, I read somewhere that you have mentioned that you love turning customers into raving fans.
Yeah.
And in your experience, how do you like do that when you're a very young team? You know, when you don't have the resources. It's quite easy to do when you probably have the resources and the money, right? But what happens when the team is small and you don't have that many people or that much money? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I'll start by saying I believe that product differentiation is becoming thinner and thinner every day with AI and with a bunch of stuff. Like SaaS is really going through a
Yeah.
big shift, and ultimately, people don't want you to tell them; they want you to show them, right? And so, with that in mind, I really believe that customer validation is everything. It's paramount. Every piece of content you put out there as a marketer, every blog post, every activation, every event has to feature a customer. It's just the way it should be. And so I think customer marketing as a function is probably one of the most well-kept secret of marketing, which I don't love. I think it deserves and really it deserves a better understanding in the market and a higher visibility, but it feels like PMM maybe 10 years ago. So I hope that customer marketing in general continues to get the awareness and the exposure that they need because they're really the secret weapon of everything you do, right? Both from a an amplification standpoint with customer content, but also from a kind of listening standpoint. Like you do customer advisory boards, you analyze Gong calls and what to really know what's top of. This is my little preamble. And then how do you do it when your team is small? There's always ways to doing it. Even if you don't have a full-time customer marketer, and I'm lucky and I have one full-time customer marketer right now at Cordial, but if it's not your case, then you as a marketer need to get closer to your CSM, right? To your customer success team calls or Clari calls, whatever, and just find these little nuggets, these little pockets of customer evidence because they're going to be throughout. And even if you don't have a call recorder, then you can do Zoom to do that. So there's always scrappy ways, I believe, to get closer to the customer and closer to the voice of the customer.
Yeah, that's lovely advice, and I really like that because like a lot of marketers are talking about it and how marketing is changing in like 2025 because of AI, because we are like, flooded with content, but we need to make those personalized connections. So I really like that point. On a different note, I think you've also mentioned that you are like a mentor and you've mentored a lot of people. In that experience, what is the common mistakes that you see like a marketer make? It necessarily doesn't have to be a young marketer in general, because the trends are changing really rapidly. So what is the
Yeah.
most common pitfall that you're seeing, like, people are making?
Oh man, there's a lot of them. It's a spectrum, right? Based on the person's function, seniority, culture. You ask a young French marketer or you ask an experienced, tenured head of CS in the Bay, it's just going to be a completely different answer. I would say, in general, for me, I think there's still the perception. I'm going to focus on marketing, if that's okay, because that's kind of what we're talking about here, right? The
Yeah.
mistake is people continue to kind of like in their heads separate or delineate brand and demand. And I know 1,000 articles have been published on the topic and whatnot, but I still see that whole all the time. And so sometimes it's like, yeah, this is a brand awareness play, or hey, this is a pipeline generation play. I don't like that separation. It's if you do things well, it's kind of the same thing, right? Like the brand program or campaign brand of today is ultimately going to turn into pipeline tomorrow. So brand is demand. It's just a matter of timeline, right? If you want more short-term type stuff, yes, you're going to index a little more on demand programs. And if you want maybe higher, bigger impact, but a little longer in time, then you're going to go for that big category or kind of brand type of campaign. So that's a mistake that I think honestly the industry has forced us into. You have brand marketers, you have head of growth and demand generation, and here at Cordial we're no exception. We also fell into that trap, and I'm trying to think about how we can reconcile both worlds because I do believe that that separation is artificial. Brand demand, it's one same thing, and I try to coach people on how to avoid that mistake.
So follow up on that, because this is a very interesting point, right? Uh, how, from your experience, what is it that you would do different to sort of bridge that gap? Because, like you said, it's an industry-wide thing. Like we have head of brands and brand teams are separate and demand gen teams are separate. Uh, what would you do differently, maybe as a CMO now, or like advise other people from your experience?
Finding a better name, that's one thing. I don't love brand and I don't love demand generation. That's one, right? But like beyond the name, I think every brand campaign has to be measured in terms of pipeline attribution and revenue attribution, and vice versa, right? It's not always like the upstream stuff that you need to translate into downstream metrics. It's also the downstream stuff like actual one-to-one ABM campaigns, for example, or one to few. Like that also can have an effect on your voice and then ultimately kind of goes back up to upstream effect as well. So I think what I'm trying to do is be extremely rigorous about how we measure success, about our revenue attribution. And I think there's now modern ways of doing that, modern tools to do that, like the dark funnel. I hope that this year is going to be the year where we stop kind of thinking and talking about the dark funnel, because I don't think it's as dark as people say. I think there's now with AI and whatnot and data collection, there's now like better ways to measuring the dark funnel type stuff. So that's what I'm trying to do, bridging that gap by using the same data and KPI definition, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Uh, and how would you measure that brand value? Because I think this is something that all marketers struggle with, right? Even with like PMM, sometimes like, because you do certain campaigns where it's difficult to just put that number to it. But there are tools like that can help us identify intent. So do you have a different way of measuring things, or anything related to that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I have my brand. Maybe that would be a follow-up item or something. Like if people are interested, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn or whatever, or we could even have that as a resource. But I do
Yes.
have my brand slash category scorecard, where I have all the sets of metrics that I'm tracking, and it's pretty detailed. Because you can't, like, I think that's the issue. People want one metric to track the power of the brand, but one metric does not do justice to this, right? You need multiple metrics across all the channels and across a variety of things to kind of like better assess how your brand is resonating out there. So examples would be, if the words that you use in your narrative are actually being used by your buyer, and you would track that with recorded calls, right? And for example, if your prospects and your customers are actually using some of the lingo that is part of your narrative. Like that's one way. There's word of mouth type metrics. There's branded search type metrics. Like there's so many metrics that can help you really track how you're doing on the brand, and consequent and as a consequence how you're doing at the demand levels.
Yeah, that's great. I think we'll have that resource in the link of the podcast.
Yeah,
So thank you so much for that. Thank you for sharing that. It's so helpful. Uh,
of course.
Now let's just switch up some gears. I want to, because you write a lot about your hot takes on LinkedIn. I want
Uh-huh.
to hear your hot take on the recent trends, or like any upcoming trend, anything that you feel about the next year.
In PMM specifically, or in
PMM or marketing in general.
yeah, let's do PMM because I feel like I was a little broader than PMM today, and if PMM is part of the audience and it's where I'm coming from, so we can do PMM. Yeah, I think I don't know. I have many hot takes on PMM, but I also think that hot takes, the word has become a commodity, and everybody has hot takes, and it's not even hot anymore. It's like lukewarm takes type thing. But PMM, man, I think PMM is fascinating. The best school to me, the most impactful, potentially impactful function in marketing, but also the hardest. It's really, really hard. No one understands it. No one knows how to measure it. It's unique because it's both deep and broad, right? You need to deep you need deep market and product knowledge, but you also need a broad coverage of functions and KPIs. Like there's so many KPIs you can pick. So I think the hot take is pick the one metric you'll own. You can influence many KPIs, many business metrics, but that's the trap because then you lack in focus, you become too broad, too spread thin, and that's not a good sign. And then no one really understands what you're doing. So I understand as a PMM, it's frustrating because you want to own multiple things and you want to show impact across the business. But man, just start with one, pick one, or no one will ever really truly understand your scope and your impact.
Yeah, that is a hot take. Definitely not a lukewarm take. I really like that part. Like
I hope.
everyone is just talking about the lukewarm takes everywhere. But yeah, but that
Yeah,
is so true.
it drives me crazy when I see like all these like also PMMs, man. PMMs love the frameworks. I actually like frameworks. Sometimes I'm a little harsh on them, but frameworks should never be like an excuse for laziness, right? And like it just has to help you and not like replace your brain. But like I see all the PMM frameworks, and it's like you have like lagging indicators, leading indicators, sales led, product led, blah blah. Like it becomes that like 3, 5 dimensional matrix of metrics you can own, and then people's heads are just exploding. I think we're doing a disservice to the function by sometimes over complicating what the metrics that PMM owns should be. So you start with one, you pick one, you show success, then you can expand, but start with one and don't do the crazy multi-dimensional matrix type thing.
That's so true, because I feel the same about frameworks. Because when you write it, it seems really nice to put out like a LinkedIn post on it. But then if you
Yeah.
apply it, it might just completely be different. Like when you
That's right.
apply that and when I apply that, it would be different for because we work in different contexts and we work in different like companies.
Exactly.
It's a great LinkedIn post and it gets a lot of likes. So I think that's why people make it.
Yeah, no, I like this. I'm a little harsh on frameworks, and I do like my frameworks. I do have some frameworks as well. That category scorecard thing I just mentioned, it's kind of a playbook or a framework. I just think sometimes people can be a little rigid and forget that the framework might not apply to all situations. And so yeah, that's end of my rant on frameworks and playbooks.
That's so true. Okay, cool. Now I want to hear about your walk across Spain. I read a LinkedIn post on that. What was that? Where did that come from? And how was the experience?
Yeah, that you're asking that question, Rita. Thank you. It was back in October. I was between jobs and I took a mini sabbatical. I've always liked to walk and to write, not just LinkedIn stuff, but also I write fiction and whatnot on the side. And so, I could escape I guess the chores of the house and of parenting and whatnot, and walked for 2, 3 weeks in Spain. It's called the Camino de Santiago, which is a religious pilgrimage type of walk. Although I am not religious myself, everybody can do it. And basically, you just walk 5, 6 hours a day for multiple weeks, and it's exhausting, but it's a beautiful meditative self-reflective experience that I really felt very grateful for.
And where did you get that idea for? Like suddenly you were like, oh, let me quit my job and walk for 6 weeks.
No, I was leaving Clari already. My last day was like in end of September, I believe, and Cordial, the new gig was kind of waiting. So I was in Europe anyway for family reasons. So it just played that well. And if you're a European like me, I'm French. Everybody's heard of the Camino de Santiago in Spain. Like it's a big thing here. I mean, there. So it's just obvious. I was like, hey, I'm in France. I don't really know what I'm going to do next. I'm between jobs. I just need that mental, refresh, restart type of button. And that was the walk. And I'm glad I did it. It was exhausting, right? It's really exhausting. It's hard on the joints, on the body, on the shoulders. You carry your backpack. Your feet and toes are completely destroyed. I had to get my nails removed last week. Sorry, TMI, but like that happened. But yeah, it's a wonderful, it's a little cliche, but kind of life changing experience. This is a before and after the walk, and for me, it was transformational.
That's lovely. I think you should did you write a detailed blog on it? Because you should.
I wrote a book about it. It's gonna publish in shameless plug. Yeah, it's gonna. If everybody's interested, just DM me. It's gonna be self-published in a few weeks, and promoted on Instagram. So that's kind of a different Julian, but that still is me.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
that's crazy. I don't know how you manage your time. I don't know. Do you have like 25, 26 hours in a day? Because you're like
I will.
a
No, no, I'm a big sleeper, so I actually need my hours of sleep. No, I've always written. I like to write. It's natural for me. I read a lot. I write. I have my little routine. I write on Sunday morning for LinkedIn stuff, and I write at night and whatnot for fiction stuff. So it all works out. It's
wow,
just a matter of like setting the intention and carving out the time.
that is lovely. I think we all gonna read your book. I will definitely because I love how you write your LinkedIn posts, and I mean that's the only writing that I've read. But I'm sure the book is going to be lovely. And that was
Thank
such
you.
a surprise. Like I didn't know about and I was just like, oh, have you written a blog about it? And you were like, yeah, I wrote a whole book.
Yeah.
Such a cool flex to like just have that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It'll be good. It'll be different, right? It's a different
Yeah.
writing, and as I said, a different Julian. And I actually wrote that in French, but I had it translated in English. It's gonna be short, more like poetry type stuff. So anyhow,
Wow.
enough enough about my self-promotion. I'm sorry.
That's completely okay. I think, yeah, if you
Yeah.
have like a pre-order book like link somewhere, I'll put that as well here. Um,
Nice, nice, good.
so like coming to my last question,
Yeah.
any advice that you want to leave? And it could be like, for PMM, or it could just be like something that you learned from your walk in Spain, you know. Any advice that you want to leave,
Yeah.
the audience with?
Yeah, yeah. I think we'll maybe stay at the higher level of like the walk, the like the experience after that thing in Spain. I think I think there's a randomness in life and in any journey. And sometimes I see people on LinkedIn and they're like, I went from CMO, like from this to CMO in what X amount of years, and it was all planned out. And I think that's a lie. I think there's a lot of just like random stuff that happens, good and bad. And but the thing with like randomness, including the randomness of the people you meet and and whatnot, because those shape your lives, right? Lives is just a succession of encounters and experiences in my mind, but you need the right mindset to be open to that. So I think the like everybody like gets the same level of randomness in a way in their lives. The people who end up stronger or happier, I think, are the ones that have an open mind towards that randomness, and you just welcome the random meeting of people, the random flow of ideas, the random events that happen. You go with the punches if they're bad, you go with the joy if they're good. And if you're open to that aspect of life, that randomness, then good things will follow. I really believe that. I know it sounds cheesy again, but I think it's a mindset.
Yeah, it's not cheesy at all, I think. Yeah, that's something that I've also realized in my life. Everything that happens is just a game of probability. I studied biology in my college, and then when I just studied how we were made, I was like, wow, it's just so random. Like, we just started out as nothing, and now we're just building cars and buildings. It's
There you
so
go.
crazy. Yeah.
It
So it's
is.
just
It is
like,
crazy.
yeah, advice. Little philosophical. I think that's something your book will have. So really excited for that. But thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time. I hope I made it like, just like in 20 minutes. But it was
I think we
lovely
did.
talking to you. It was lovely talking to you. And yeah, I mean, thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thanks for having me.